Welcome, everyone. So amazing to see where everyone is joining us from all over the world. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. On behalf of Contact North, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the webinar, How to Use AI for Course Design and Assessment. My name is Sarah Gover. I'm the Director of Teach Online and the Online Learning News at Contact North, and I'll be hosting the session today. Before we begin, I would like to start off with provincial land acknowledgement, respectfully acknowledging that Contact North's work and the work of our community partners takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across the province. We are grateful to be able to work and live in these territories. We are thankful to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to strengthen Ontario and all communities across the province. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. So we are using the Zoom webinar platform, as I mentioned earlier, so mics and video are off for participants. The chat is open. Just remember to select everyone on the pull-down menu. But if you do have any questions for the presenters, please use the Q&A tool. And you can find that at the bottom of your screen. That just helps us line up the questions in them so that we don't lose them in the side of in the chat. I'd also like to point out that we do have live captioning. To activate that, there's the closed caption icon at the bottom of the screen. And that reminds me that I need to do that. So there we go. Okay, so I have that. Once the webinar is finished, I will post the link to the recording as well as the presentation slides to teachonline.ca. And I will put that link in the chat momentarily. And also the Zoom system will email that out to you in about 24 hours. All right, that's enough for me. On to the main event. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Peter Shea, Learning Designer and Director of Professional Development at Middlesex Community College, and Devan Walton, Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Northern Essex Community College. Peter and Devan have been involved with AI in education years before ChatGPT came into the scene, so they have a great depth of knowledge and experience that they'll be sharing with us in their presentation today. So thanks, Peter and Devan, for joining us, and we look forward to what you have to say.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Great to be with you today. As Sarah pointed out, Devan and I have been involved in work around AI for learning for a number of years, and while it's very gratifying to see that there's that the conversation on AI has become hypercharged in the last year and a half, it's also a little bit bewildering because much of what is being said in the chatter is repetitious and not really providing actually any fresh insight information. So today, in this short hour, we're hoping to give you a digest of some of the quality information around how AI came into being for education, how it's being used, and how it might be used. So to give you an overhead, I'm going to run this slide deck for me and Devan. So let me go to. So I'm just going to start by saying, before I begin, people often wonder, what tools do people use in education? In other words, to use AI. Some of these you've heard of, no doubt. ChatGPT is most famous, and it has the image generator DALL-E, which I made generous use of for this presentation. Another very good AI tool is called Claude AI from the company is Anthropic. Did I get that right, Devan?
Yes.
Okay. Midjourney is a tool for image generation. Midjourney is best known for producing some of the most high-quality photorealistic images. And of course, Google Gemini. Google is the company that many people expected to get to take the lead when AI really broke into the public's consciousness. That hasn't happened yet, but they are still a very strong contender because of their decade of work in the field of AI. So again, in terms of what kind of tools are people using or linking to, these are the ones. So before I begin, I want to give a little overarching theme here. One of the things that we have observed when AI is being used to enhance course design and assessment practices, there are really two levels. And level one is using AI to enhance existing course design assessment models. What does that mean? Well, it means generating syllabi, generating writing assignments, generating rubrics, providing feedback to student work, In other words, it's serving the current model in a way that doesn't really change the model. It just enhances its productivity. Level 2 is using AI to create entirely new forms of course design and assessment models. And it's our contention that while many people will start with level 1, it's really important for the most ambitious organizations for learning to really find their way to level 2 as soon as possible, because the potential here is enormous. And the visual comparison I'm using is between Clark Kent and Superman. Clark Kent obviously is an upstanding citizen, but Superman is on an entirely different level. So that's a little visual I want to keep in mind there. So I'm going to turn the talk over now to Devan, who, as Sarah pointed out, is a professor of computer science, and in his previous career before education was working in the AI field. So his understanding is far and away deeper than most of the people, speakers you encounter. So Devan, without further ado.
Oh, thank you, Peter. So AI has been with us for quite some time in education, but before it took on a slightly different form. So in the 90s, when we were dealing with AI applications, we were dealing with tools that were similar to, I guess, what we call today, like cognitive tutor tools. And these tools mechanistically operated a little bit differently than some of the modern AI tools and implementations. Today, we have these large language models that run on this transformer model. But back, 30 years ago, we were dealing with tools that were a little bit more rule-based. And if you jump to the next slide, Peter, I can show you, I guess, more what I mean, where you would have some sort of task that you would want the student to perform, and you would identify where in that task the student might run into misconceptions or the student might make mistakes, and you would put in like hard-coded outputs for each of those potential branches. So in this sort of implementation of AI, most of the content and most of the branching and most of the tracing through the network was orchestrated by a human ahead of time and would run autonomously once the student would engage with the material. And so these systems, just by their nature, because a human had to hand code all this information into the system, they were somewhat rigid. But the upside of this is that you would know precisely how they would perform. They would operate in a very deterministic manner. And this made them very reliable, and this made them very useful for niche contexts where you would want to be able to, when a student made a particular mistake, you would want to give them precise feedback to remediate whatever misconception that led to either that mistake or that situation of struggling. But on the downside, though they were incredibly reliable, this rigidity made them somewhat poor at supporting learner agency and motivation. So in the real world, when a student or a learner is negotiating knowledge in the real world, they have like a whole constellation of potential options that they could perform at a particular step, and they can essentially follow a equally vast array of potential goals within that problem space. But within these early cognitive tutor AI tools, uh, the problem space at each given point and the number of options that the student could make were somewhat limited because, as you recall from what I said earlier, the cognitive tutors were rule-based and handcrafted by humans. So they were limited in how they could support a variety of student choice options.
There was a quick question about give an example of an early AI tool, and I know that Carnegie Mellon, I think in the 90s and 80s, which was really learning in terms of learning architecture, had a couple of tools, although I can't recall the name of them off the top of my head. but that's some of the examples that I can think of. Devin, can you think of any ones by name that we?
Yeah, Carnegie Mellon has a tool, and they also have an open source tool where you can still create like these rule-based scenarios uh, uh, for developing cognitive tutor tools. Cognitive tutor tools were implemented across a whole variety of different research institutions. And cognitive tutor tools refer to the entire class of tools that were built. MIT had some, uh, uh, like you're saying, Carnegie CMU had some. Most major institutions had some sort of incarnation of cognitive tutor tools. Uh, and this kind of like brings us to today and the modern implementation of AI in terms of education with large language models. Uh, uh, and these models aren't built through explicit rules. So the architecture is still, designed by humans, the encoder and decoder, but these modern AI identify connections between content that have not been explicitly identified by humans. So when the AI is generating content and you give it a prompt and it's going into going through the layers of its model to generate an output response, it's not necessarily making connections that a human made ahead of time for it to be able to interpret that problem space. So the process is somewhat more opaque, I guess is the key takeaway here. Uh, and while this opaqueness makes it a little bit more difficult for us to get reliable responses from AI, you've probably heard about issues with hallucinations, where the AI will uh, and confabulate details. It'll make up academic articles that have never actually existed. It'll invent citations. These are all part of uh, uh, the inability. One of the downsides in terms of reliability is it does have the tendency to hallucinate and confabulate, and this is part of the nature of a transformer architecture. Uh, the key point to take away is here is though these systems are incredibly flexible in terms of how they can support learner motivation and autonomy, they are more prone to making errors. Uh, and I would say that when we keep this in mind, right, when we keep in mind this Achilles heel of these modern systems in terms of their hallucination rate and uh, confabulation rate, we need to think about what affordances this allows, right? Uh, I saw somebody in the chat mention that they used Chat GPT 3.5 a lot and that it frequently hallucinates. Uh, and it is true that a lot of the uh, these some of these lower parameter models like ChatGPT 3.5 do have a very high error rate, you might call it, when it comes to generating content. But by I would say by their nature, all large language models will confabulate. Uh, Everything that they generate is a hallucination. It's just that sometimes the hallucinations align with our model of the truth, with the human model of truth. So really, by their nature, everything they do is hallucinate. So how can we utilize this in an educational context? How can we utilize the incredible flexibility that they offer uh, to become a valuable tool in the context of a learning environment? Well, one thing we could potentially do is play off these creative elements of the not just large language models, but also the whole suite of generative artificial intelligent tools that exist right now. Uh, One of the tools that exists is Bing for generating images. Peter talked about Midjourney, which is another tool for generating content, image content with AI. There are a few other tools out there for specifically tuned for generating images. Dolly. Bing is one of the more accessible tools since it is, if your institution has access to Microsoft 365, then you have enterprise access to Bing, and you're able to use Bing to do things like do image generation. And your students would also be able to use Bing for using image generation. So this could be one of the potential affordances that you use within the classroom is image generation. But we can go beyond just doing image generation into other types of media as well. One thing that ChatGPT is capable of doing is it's capable of creating mind maps and visualizations. Before, I think this ability was restricted just to premium users, but they're slowly expanding this out to the free users as well. And essentially, what it will do is it will use a Python environment uh, to render visual content, essentially to be able to render things like waterfall diagrams and mind map diagrams. So you would be able to give it a task, spatial visual task, like can you create a diagram about the key themes of Great Gatsby, and it would be able to do that. It would be able to orient this visual content accordingly, which could have a lot of implications for the classroom. We can also use one of the tools that is quickly becoming more popular right now is Suno. They just put out their third model, I think, a couple weeks ago. And Suno is great at, and the site is just like suno.ai, and it does a great job of you providing lyrics to the model, and it's able to spit out a rhythmically coherent song. So you give it lyrics, and it'll create the musical ensemble of instruments and vocals to fit those lyrics to a rhythm, which has a lot of possibilities for getting learners excited about a topic. Traditionally, we've had them build presentations uh, for sharing key ideas and getting other students in the classroom interested. But I've been experimenting lately with having students like draft songs and create multimedia content for explaining key concepts that they find interesting. Oh, I don't know if the audio is shared, Peter, so they might not be able to.
Yeah, it's gonna say we can't hear it on our end.
Right. You might have to reshare the screen with sound.
Give me a second here, folks. Do a new share.
Yeah, you just stop
Do a
sharing.
new share and share sound and share. And let me see if that works now. Can you hear it?
So it's just a little fun thing. You give it lyrics and it creates a rhythm, it creates a beat, and adds instruments and vocals. It's kind of fun. And we can also do slightly more serious stuff with it. I encourage, if you haven't played around with Suno, I would encourage you to try. And we can jump to the next. There's also very useful tools with voice cloning. One of the most popular tools right now, the company that has probably the best voice cloning model is called 11 Labs. And essentially what they allow you to do is you give them like 30 seconds of your voice, and they're able to construct a vocal model or a voice font around your voice so that you can type something in and it will be able to create a artificial voice that sounds very similar to your own. In this case, I've tried this and done it with my own. We can share a brief snippet of this. Hey, Nurk. AI gives us an exciting opportunity to make assignments that are more interesting exhibitions of student knowledge. So that that is not me speaking. That is a synthesized version of my voice. And right, it raises some ethical concerns, right? So like when you save your voice onto this service, who really has access to it? And 11 Labs has recently allowed people to actually sell their voice on their marketplace so that other people could potentially give them essentially the rights to license your voice out, and then you get some residuals or royalties based on how people use that voice.
Can I jump in here? One of the
Yeah.
interesting and applications of the duplicated voice is that for many people, you know, who enjoy audiobooks, there are certain famous voices that performers who have for years recorded audiobooks, and in some cases, those performers have passed away, but people miss their voices. So there are instances where families of the deceased performer are licensing replication of that voice, of the performer's voice, for audiobook reading. You know, obviously opinion of that can go either way, but it's just an example of this kind of phenomenon and how it's being applied.
And in addition to voice content, there's also the ability to make video content that can then be combined with the voice content to create completely artificial avatars of ourselves. So in this video that Peter will play in just a moment, I presented one of these multimodal models, an image of myself, so a still image of myself, and it was able to manipulate that still image in such a way that it synchronized my face to the synthesized vocals that I generated from 11 Labs. So if you play the video, this is completely artificial. My voice in this video is not real, and neither is kind of the movement of my face. Hey, Nurk. AI gives us an exciting opportunity to make assignments that are more interesting exhibitions of student knowledge. And there's certainly some degree of like uncanniness to it. You'll notice that in the original still image, I had my mouth closed, so it had to make some inferences about what my teeth look like. I have like gap teeth, but in their like extrapolated version of how I would talk, I very like straight and filled in teeth, which I found kind of amusing. So potentially opens some doors for streamlining the process of generating like video content as well as audio content, and combining that together in more of a low friction way. Hey, one AI tool that my students particularly like, a lot of them have anxiety around presenting. They don't mind talking, but like getting in front of the class and presenting, even for like a video assignment, can cause them a lot of distressing anxiety. Even having their like recording themselves on video even gives them some distress. And you might have encountered this too with students that maybe in virtual classrooms that don't like to turn on their cameras in Zoom. And Adobe has this great free tool out there for providing audio, so the student would speak the audio, speak what they want, and then they could use this Adobe Audio to Animate tool to animate their voice on a cartoon character. So to give you an example, we'll play this short clip that I was able to make. Hey, Nurk. AI gives us an exciting opportunity to make assignments. So it takes whatever the student records and it applies it. It lip syncs it to a little cartoon character and has it animate around. And I've been using this in some of my own classes, and I'll share an example that a student from my class was able to make using a combination of these tools. So they used the text to speech tools to generate a artificial voice, and then they would use that artificial voice to make a little animated character explain their project.
In the world of Thalasia, darkness has fallen. The Octoroks, a race of powerful sea creatures, have taken over and plunged the land into chaos. But there is hope. 3 legendary heroes have come together to save the world. Link, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Solid Snake. With their unique abilities and weapons, they must work together to defeat the Octoroks and restore peace to Thalassia.
So the student
Join
was
them
able
on their
to
epic quest.
create a little demo video that explained their product. They made a game in the computer science course, and they were able to put together this video using AI tools that explained their project in a way that made them a little bit more comfortable. Oh, that the voice is the voice is artificial, so they chose to use an artificial voice rather than their own. Yes, the Adobe Animate tool is free. Some of the other tools for uh, uh, text to speech tools like 11 Labs, there is a cost associated with some of those, but there are many text to speech tools that are free out there, and I've been mostly using the free text to speech tools within my own courses. And I guess we can jump to thinking about as practitioners, how can we potentially use these tools to develop course content? Peter talked about this a little bit at the start of this presentation as being like level 1. Like, how do we create static content that in a maybe a more efficient or faster way? One of the ways that we could potentially do this is to use AI to remix some of our existing assignments or some of our existing coursework. And one of the better tools out there for doing this and accomplishing this task is Claude is probably one of the better tools. And right now, access is kind of spotty depending on your location. I know Anthropic has really been US focused right now. So it might be that Google's Google's large language model tools will probably like Gemini Pro and Gemini Ultra might make it out to other countries faster, because I'm not sure what Claude's strategy is right now. But right now, Claude is probably one of the better tools if you can access it for making this kind of content, because the free version of Claude allows you to upload files to it. So you would be able to take either a docx file or a PDF file of one of your existing assignments, and you would be able to upload it to the model. And then you would be able to put in a prompt along with it, like, I'd like to structure the attached document to generate a new activity on calculating algorithms or something like that. So able to utilize the structure of an existing assignment, and it would be able to translate that structure into another content domain, essentially. And I've been able to do this successfully with, you can use Claude, but you really could use any of the other models that allow file uploading. Gemini allows it. ChatGPT, I think the free version soon will be allowing file uploading. I know they've been extending the ability to do file uploads out. And it really changes the game on how quickly you can utilize existing resources to generate new ones. One of the great things with as these models have larger context sizes, it also allows you to upload multiple documents. So one of the new things we're seeing in a lot of the newer models is we're seeing like context sizes of like 1 million tokens, or roughly around like 300 pages of content. You would in theory be able to upload a whole array of different articles related to a content domain that you would like to generate either a module for, or generate a maybe even a slideshow or a lesson plan about. And you'd be able to specify like precisely how long you would want that module to be. And I think this is an important part when using these modules, is specifying the word length, because otherwise they tend to be a bit stingy in their output. So if you don't specify, like, I want this to be 2,000 words long, in most cases they'll try to minimize the amount of outputs that the amount of text that they generate. And then also specifying what level of content you want to make the assignment or module for. In my case, introductory college level courses, but that might vary depending on what type of practitioner you are. And most importantly, specifying a structure that you would like, if you're not providing a structure template, specifying a particular structure for the content you would like it to generate. So in this case, I'm specifying a structure of like introduction, learning objectives, core content, real world connection, and multiple choice questions for a form of assessment. It would be able to stick to this structure, follow that prompt, and generate content. And we could apply this same structure to, maybe we wanted to generate slides for us. Now, it won't be able to generate a PowerPoint file for us, but it would at least be able to generate suggestions for slide title, slide image, and then provide slide content with each slide that it gives us. And it can even do APA citations in some cases. Now, this will vary depending on what model you use. Some of the newer models, and some of these paid models like Gemini Ultra and Claude Opus and stuff like that, are a little bit better at utilizing real citations rather than confabulated citations. So if you're using ChatGPT 3.5, you still might encounter a lot of confabulated citations or citations that don't actually exist. So that would be my one caveat emptor with that. There's also Peter and I have been working on tools for streamlining this process a little bit more. And I can actually put the link to this tool that Peter will demonstrate for you all in just a moment. Essentially, for Peter's institution, I've built a couple tools that utilize the Claude API to streamline this process so that educators and practitioners don't have to worry too much about structuring the prompts. They just explain what they want and it will automatically generate content for you. I can grab the URL to this tool. If you want to play around with this tool as Peter's doing it, I will put this into the chat. It is this link. And let me see if I can send this to everybody. And Peter, if you want, you can click on that link. And we can maybe pick a topic that from the chat, whoever wants to name a topic, and we can generate some OER using this tool. Public health, maybe, yeah. So let's create like a public health OER. So Peter will put in a topic, he'll click the submit button, and what this tool will do, and you can try it for yourself, I put the link into the chat if you want to try it out too, is it will attempt to take that topic, decompose it into 5 sub topics, and generate a roughly 18-page OER module on that topic. And what this tool uses is it uses the Claude or Anthropic API to put this information together, and it will appear in the chat box right beneath that submit button. It generates a lot of it's generating like 18 pages of content, so it takes a little while to execute, a little longer than a relatively short request might. But once it completely executes, we should have a potentially complete module that contains cited content, 5 subtopics, and some simple assessments. and the goal here is to like simplify the process as much as possible for practitioners. I'm seeing a question about like math equations. Uh, so I think math inference is still not that great with a lot of large language models. They're okay if you provide them with equations. They're good at doing things like converting them into LaTeX or something like that. Like if you were to upload an image of differential equations from a chalkboard into like Claude's anthropic model, it does a pretty good job at converting whatever was written onto the chalkboard into actual mathematical equations in the form of LaTeX.
So here you see the output, the OER, and you see it's citing the sources.
And this translates to like roughly 15 pages of content with examples. It's structured in such a way that it would conform to like your typical activity module structure, where you have your uh, module topic, you have your learning objectives for that module, you have some core content, and then you also have some like relatively simple assessment. And we could go through this. And there's also a few other tools on there, if you click the link, that you can play around with. One of them is like a quiz maker tool. One of them is like a tool for making alt text, where you're able to upload an image and the AI will automatically generate alt text that would be appropriate for that image or diagram. So this is like the level one that Peter was talking about. These are basic tools for supporting essentially the educational status quo, or some of the existing educational structure. If we go to the next, if we return to the PowerPoint and we go to the next slide.
I just want a quick explanation. I suppose some of you are wondering what Bedford culture and Lowell culture means. As a sampling of Bedford and Lowell are the two towns in which my college is situated. In order to demonstrate the ability to create culturally inclusive assignments, these two tabs allow you, an instructor, to upload an assignment and incorporate cultural knowledge from those communities into the design of the assignment. So that was a sample. It was a proof of concept for people who are concerned about how to design good culturally inclusive assignments.
Another thing we could potentially use is we could use these tools to design slightly more interactive content. So when I was talking about cognitive tutors earlier in the presentation, I was talking about systems that were somewhat like rule-based, and humans would have to hand code the branching. We can potentially use these large language models to help us develop our own little cognitive tutor style interaction tools. So we could ask it a question like, construct the logic for a branching interactive story that helps the learner perform basic chemical kinematics. And we could ask it to do this in the form of a Google, like implement it as if we wanted to use Google Forms to do the implementation. I say Google Forms because Google Forms is a tool I think most people have access to, and it's not like a proprietary cognitive tutor tool. So we could potentially have it generate content for us. So if we go to the next slide, if we were to ask it that prompt, it would give us an output very similar to this, where it gives us like an interactive story structure for our Google Form sheet for exploring chemical kinematics. It gives us what choices we should give for each question, as well as the logic of which questions, or like if the student selects choice A, what question will that link up to? What where will that decision bring them to in the broader sequence of questions? And we could then operationalize this within Google Forms. So if we go to the next slide, Peter, I think I get into the process of how you could potentially operationalize like this cognitive tutor model within Google Forms. So you could create separate section questions within Google Forms. You can create sections, and with each section you would have like a single question you would be asking. And you would get something similar to what we see on the right there. And then the next step for finishing this operationalization would be to actually connect the questions together with other questions. So if we jump to the next slide, I give a very short demo of how you would do this. So you click the little 3 dots in the lower right of the form, and it allows you to enable this option for, and if you jump to the next slide, Peter, it allows you to enable an option for going to different sections based on an answer. And if you enable that, the next slide demonstrates how you can match questions to specific sections in order to build this interactive story where it becomes almost like a choose your own adventure that the students can engage with. Now, I realize this is not ideal. This is a time-consuming process. But even still, a lot of the cognitive legwork is being done by the AI model. So you could potentially generate one of these simulations within a couple hours.
And just as a launching point there, I've been creating educational sims for over 20 years, and I think they're some of the most powerful form of learning content, but they can be time intensive. But using AI, I can now do in a day what used to take me several weeks to do. And I think that's I think the barrier for simulation adoption has largely been the time required to create one. And I think one of the great overlooked elements of AI's contribution to learning experiences is that you can create learning simulations much more quickly. And it's funny that early on we introduced the topic of public health, because this is a screen grab from a simulation I created for a public health instructor who wanted a simulation taking students through the various ways in which public health issues touch upon their daily lives. So using an AI, I generated a series of scenarios, choices, and feedback loops about how public health it comes into contact with people in their regular life. In this case, the person has to choose for their first drink in the morning, tap water, bottled water, or untreated water. And based upon those choices, they click on their choice, and then it indicates to them, what are the consequences of that particular choice. So by the end of the simulation, the student has an experience that really makes him or her understand the way in which public health touches upon their daily lives. They don't see it as a purely academic experience. And by the way, even the image there, the bottles, it was generated by an AI tool. I used Midjourney to create the image of the bottles for the simulation. So, and creating good simulations, another element was getting the right images, because you needed such specialized images. Even if you had an image database, it took you forever to find the right collection of pictures you needed to construct your simulation. Now I don't have that problem. So I think this, in particular, the creation of powerful interactive learning tools is quite possibly one of the most powerful contributions that AI can bring to creating an entirely new paradigm for learning. Because so much of our learning content, so much of our learning experiences are really passive, with the students simply listening to instructors. But I always take as my lead point the comment made many years ago by Herb Simon at Carnegie Mellon, which is that people only learn when they're actually doing things. And the only way an instructor can really influence learning is by influencing whatever it is that the student happens to be doing. I don't think we've made much progress in that area, but I think with AI now we can, because we can create entire libraries of simulations relatively quickly. And there are simulations which we can revise based upon feedback from people. I create the one for my college, and I'm currently working on, with Devan's help, creating a hub for open educational simulations that people can use or contribute to. So I really think this is one of the most exciting areas for AI in learning.
And I guess I know we're running short on time because we're going to leave some time for specifically dealing with questions. But I guess maybe the last thing we can show is an example that I've been working on with how do we operationalize large language models in the context of a learning experience, where the large language model is mediating the activity in some way. And one way that I've been experimenting with this is with negotiation simulations. So in the context of this game, students are in control of one small island, and they have 4 neighbor islands that they have to uh, almost work with and negotiate with developing climate policy. And each of the 4 islands in each corner of the map has a different perspective on climate. One of the islands is very climate skeptical. They're an industrious country or island, and they don't really believe too much in climate change, and they're very for maximizing productivity. One of the other islands is much more in tune with uh, the their natural ecology and resources, and they're very aware. They're citizens of a very high awareness of uh, anthropogenic climate change. And the idea here is that the student has to try to develop climate policy for their own island in a way that negotiates with these other island actors and these other governments. And we can test this out, Peter. If you click on the link, we can see how this works. So there's a little green bar underneath each of the islands. So if you click on the info for each of the islands, it shows you a little blurb about what that island is all about, who lives there, and what their almost like philosophy for approaching climate is. And if you exit out of that, Peter, there's a little green bar that's adjacent to the flags, and that represents how friendly currently your island is with that island. And then in the left side of the screen, there's a prompt that that the student has to answer. So, like, what will you do about fishing policy? And then the student would type in, they would outline their policy about how they would manage fishing or whatever the prompt happens to be on their island. So Peter would then type in, like, he could just do like a very brief policy outline or very simple outline. And then he would submit that. And what will happen is the student's response, along with the prompt that they answered, will be sent off to the AI for evaluation. Part of that evaluation will involve the language model generating responses for each of the other islands based on what the student does. And then the game will automatically adjust the friendliness that each island has with the student's island accordingly. So it'll spit out the content, and then you would be able to read through the feedback that it gives you about each of the islands, and then they would be able to hit the X button, and it will generate a new prompt for the student to work with. So then it'll be the next prompt that they have to answer. And this could potentially be a direction that we go in with designing around the kind of these interactive affordances of large language models, and being able to design content that taps into the motivational needs and autonomy needs of students and learners. And I guess we can probably stop, and I'll share the link to that tool as well within the chat, just in case anyone. Again, this is a very this is a prototype that I've been I haven't really spent too much time on. I've just been working on it a very little, though I will share the link. And I guess we can probably stop there. There's some other stuff we were going to go, but I wanted to leave time for questions.
Great. Thank you, Devan, for that. Yes, we have quite a few questions that have been popping up in the chat and the Q&A. So won't be able to get to all of them, but there are a number, and there seems to be consistent theme with AI privacy and ethical issues. So one of the participants sort of sums it up by saying the biggest issue with the use of AI is privacy, ethical issues, and academic integrity. How should institutions go about these issues?
These are some of the topics, obviously, that are dominating the discourse around AI and education, and I won't pretend that we have simple answers to them, other than there needs to be a serious conversation at any institution. And I know that in the past year, one of the ways in which institutions have dealt with it have been by drafting at least the first versions of AI guidelines and policies. In fact, one of my colleagues, Lance Eaton, who I'll be seeing later today, shared via Google a series of sample policies that he collected from and aggregated from colleges around the United States and possibly Canada as well. And there's one from Australia as great samplings of how people have gone about it, so that any institution can look at them and then try to figure out what concepts and ideas they can use that fit well within their own institutions. So I think that's a good starting point, because nobody can say at this moment they have the absolute answer. But I think if you're working at a school or a college that doesn't have at least the first draft of a guideline policy, that's a problem, and that should probably be your first priority. In terms of academic integrity, that's another challenge, particularly in writing-based assessment. And let me say that I've also, among my other roles, I've been a teacher of college writing for over 30 years, so I well understand these issues. My sense is that faculty are going to have conversations with their students about the appropriate versus the inappropriate use of AI. I don't think a blanket ban is a good idea, and I don't think it'll work. Students have already begun using these tools to some degree, and many of these tools are AI already integrated into the tools that the schools ask them to use, like Office 365 or Google. So trying to create a wall, it's like sandbagging in front of the ocean. Sooner or later, the water's coming over it. So the best thing that any college or school can do is have a conversation and try to arrive at some evolving policy approach. But that's the first step in terms that I think they should be doing. And just bear in mind that you're at the same point as virtually everyone else. So there are a lot of partners out there for whom you can join a conversation, because everyone is trying to solve these problems at once. Devin, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question, right? I think there's the tendency a lot of people have to want like detection tools, but be able to identify when students are using it. But there are a lot of drawbacks with this, especially tools like ChatGPT-0 or something, or GPT-0, that claim to be able to identify when students use AI to do writing. These tools have a tendency to and this gets into some of the content I was going to talk about the new digital divide. So these tools are more effective with the free versions of AI than they are the paid versions of AI. So any rules that we put in place for detection will disproportionately affect those that can't afford to use, the premium AI version of tools. And any student that can't afford to use those tools will be, essentially, we won't be able to detect their use. So we get like this new, essentially, digital divide and asymmetry in how we can apply disciplinary practices. And this is difficult, right? Like, so in the absence of being able to accurately detect AI use, what do we do? And I don't think anyone has a good answer, right? You can change your assessment practices, but realistically, nobody's going to just overhaul their entire assessment practice in the next year or couple months, especially when we don't really understand what the trajectory of AI is. There's talk that the next version of ChatGPT, GPT-5, or whatever they end up calling it, is going to be agent-based. In other words, rather than you just talking to the little chat and giving it a task to do. You delegate an agent that will then be able to be self-autonomous in executing a series of complex tasks. So then students would be able to do tasks like make sure whatever you generate is not detectable and follows this my previous pattern of writing. So further making it difficult to detect AI. And I think the geometric rate at which AI is progressing, or at least has progressed so far, like who knows how it will evolve. It maybe it plateaus in the next year, maybe it keeps growing, maybe even exponentially, right? And the very glacial pace at which organizational and school policy and institutional policy changes, I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Because institutions just can't adapt as quickly as these AI companies come up with new ways of interacting with these tools and new abilities for these tools to generate content and interact with content. So yeah, I know it's kind of a cop-out answer. I'm not. It's like somewhat of a non-answer, but reality is nobody really knows how to deal with this.
One thing that I have pointed out to a lot of my colleagues, and I say to when I face a group of my colleagues, I say to them, look, there are many of us in these rooms who are over the age of 40, which means we were probably in college or graduate school in the 90s when the internet was introduced. And we remembered how bad the response was from higher education. We don't want to replicate that. We don't want to do that. We want to be much more graceful and intelligent and thoughtful about how we handle the introduction to AI into higher education, rather than pretending somehow we can build up a barrier and adopt a garrison mentality. That didn't work then, and it's certainly not going to work with AI. We're just going to have to be thoughtful, creative individuals, like the people that we've always claimed to our students that we are. So it's an interesting challenge, but it's going to require a lot of dialogue and a lot of experimentation. And I wanted just to see if I could skip ahead to this image here before we leave. This is certainly one of my concerns. AI is a very powerful tool, and we're using it to pull a very slow and incremental model of learning, as Devan pointed out. So that as you have conversations at your organizations, bear that in mind. This tool will only serve the old model to a certain degree. At some point, it will demand a new model. And so institutions should start thinking about that as well. That's just a thought going forward. So.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Peter and Devan. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. So thank you for joining us and sharing your insights and expertise on using AI in education. I know we didn't get to hit everything on your slides, but hopefully I'll be able to get a copy of those and I can post them with the recording after it has processed. And I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day for joining us. I hope you're able to take some of these great nuggets of information and examples and be able to apply them in your own practice. And lots of great engagement, comments and conversations in the chat. Thank you so much for that interaction. A few of you have asked about the recording. So once it's processed, I will post it to teachonline.ca under the webinar series tab, and along with the slides as well. So thanks again, Peter and Devan. It was a pleasure having you, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'll add the link to the guidelines repository to the slide so people can go to that and bring it to their schools as well. And as for one last question, the SIM repository is under development right now, but I'll be posting it as developments go forward. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day, everyone.